We are now live.
Thank you. Okay, 7 o'clock, I'm calling the meeting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the January 19th, 2021 Planning Board meeting. For this meeting, the City of Graham is convening by Zoom video phone conference as posted on the City of Graham's website, identifying how the public may join. Due to the corona pandemic, this meeting is being held by the Zoom platform. This meeting is being recorded for the purposes of taking minutes. If anyone is having technical or connection difficulties, please contact Preston Jenkins at 336-347-8674 for support. For items not on tonight's agenda, public comments to address the board at this meeting, please indicate that you wish to do so by the raise your hand feature in Zoom, or if by phone, press *9. Our meeting host will notify me that you wish to speak. As a preliminary matter, I'm Chair Dean Ward. I would like to confirm that all members or persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members present, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Vice Chair Justin Moody.
Here.
Michael Banesh. Eric Chrisman.
I'm here.
Nate Perry.
Here.
Tony Bailey.
Here.
And Mr. Bobby Chin. Mr. Chin. And Planning Director Nathan Page.
Present.
And Secretary Debbie Jolly.
Here.
Thank you, everyone. And Jeff from our IT department will be coordinating things with IT. Again, if anyone has any questions or problems connecting, please contact Preston Jenkins at 336-347-8674 for support. Okay, Nathan.
I received an email from Bobby who said he can't get in, so I sent him the updated info as well as Mr. Boney and then Chad Huffines. I think Chad is here to speak for subsequent items. Travers Webb's has the first item, and that's RZ 2010 Riverbend Business. That's a proposal to rezone an existing lot from my agenda just shut down. From RMF to B2, and the applicant is here to speak on behalf of that item.
That was Mr. Chin on the phone. He's going to try your new link, Nathan. We'll hold up for just a second to see if he can get in.
Chair Ward, do you want to go over the minutes of the last meeting while we're waiting?
Yes, sir. That'd be fine. Ladies and gentlemen of the board here, has everyone had an opportunity to look over the minutes? If so, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And we're going to hold on for just a minute. Let's see if Mr. Chin is able to get on.
There's a Bobby in the attendees. Jeff, if you promote him.
Mr. Chin, can you hear me? Your mic is muted.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, Nathan, I hate to ask you, but can we go over item A again and read that one more time, Mr. Chin?
Yes, sir, Chair Ward. The property before us is a proposed rezoning from RMF to B2. It is surrounded by two development types, a large multifamily tract and suburban residential across Hardin Street. The request is to rezone a portion of the property from RMF to B2. I apologize, the lot's not zoned occupied by a duplex. It's currently vacant. The stated reason for this zoning request is for the entire property covered under one zoning regulation. The rezoning would allow for marketing my property for future development. And George Webb, I believe, is here to speak on this one.
Thank you, Nathan. Mr. Webb, if you'd like to tell us your name and your address, and we'd like to hear from you. Mr. Webb, can you hear me?
Mr. Chairman, while he's coming on, I'd like it to be known that that property used to belong to our family, my brothers and I, and we sold it. And it says become the apartments down in there. That was this part of the land that we sold to become that part of the development. I don't think that would impact my decision on what we do with it.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. Does any board members have a problem with Mr. Chrisman sitting on this tonight? I don't.
No.
I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Not.
Mr. Webb, can you hear me?
I'm getting no activity from his microphone. John Burton's raised his hand.
Yeah, John Merton may be in the same vicinity as George.
Yep. Bring Mr. Burton on, please. Mr. Burton, your mic is muted. If you would, unmute your mic and state your name and address.
Hello, board.
Yes,
Okay, this is John Burton. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I'm gonna let Travers, his computer's not working or something, so I'm gonna let Travers use mine.
I'm the owner of the property and live directly across the street at 619 East Hardin Street in Graham. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Travers, would you mind stating your name just for the record, please, sir?
George Travers Webb III.
Thank
So
you.
I worked with the Chrismans on this property, just as he was speaking, and developed the multifamily land in the back, which is the Elevate 54 project that's been completed that has greatly enhanced that area. And the end of last year, I was approached by a large commercial business that was interested in looking at this lot. They're also looking at other areas in Graham, but this is one of their favorite spots. The challenges are obviously on South Main, there's a high volume of traffic and a lot of business activity. Around this lot, there's an empty swimming pool and some other things of that type nature. So to try to grow this area, you need to look at the radius, and that takes in the next exit of Hall River, and the whole area is affected when somebody does a study to see if the property is valuable for developing. So that's why Webb and Associates has gotten involved with this and the next project that's on the agenda, because we feel that to grow Graham, that the next exit, which is largely a truck stop at this point, it needs to be something that's going to help develop this 54 exit. In other words, that the radius and all this, the South Main is a huge plus but the Haw River is a challenge. So that I'd like to turn it over now to George Webb to address, and John on the second item.
Well, we'll talk about the second item when that comes before us, Mr. Webb. Right
Any
now.
que- Yes, sir.
Please.
So any questions?
Yeah, does any board member have any questions for Mr. Webb?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you.
Discussion from the board here?
Yeah, would access to this property be from Hardin Street or from Riverbend?
The Signature property has agreed to allow entranceway on their entrance, and that is yet to be determined. Ideally, there's a part that is already commercial, that's part of the lot that could be a queue for a drive-in area that works nicely. In other words, you see the lot is part of a bigger lot. The lot is two tracks. In other words, the back part of the lot is commercial and the front part is multifamily. So it'd just be making this property one consistent business property.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, but would the entrance to this be from Hardin Street, which is already congested, or from Riverbend, which is controlled by traffic light?
Okay, depending upon the customer that comes in, that would be proposed and all based on their workflow and this type thing.
Okay.
Anyone else? That's fair.
That link's not working. Okay, good. All right. So, okay.
Mr. Burton, you're unmuted.
What do you say? I'm unmuted.
Jeff, if you would mute Mr. Burton. Thank you. All right, any other questions from the board? Any discussion? Any questions for Nathan?
Yeah, Mr. Webb said that the other multifamily property with the duplexes on it is currently empty. I wasn't aware of that.
I missed that, Mr. Chrisman. It was, your audio was coming in and out on my
Oh,
side.
I'm sorry. Is the duplexes, quadruplex, whatever it is, that's just up the street from the property that Mr. Sedgepile owns, is that empty?
Are you able to see my mouse on the screen?
Yes.
So that's the parcel that Mr. Sedgepaw owns. I don't know how to make this thing work. The one closer to Clover.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
yeah,
if Mr. Webb would have any data on whether or not there's somebody in that unit or not.
I thought he said that property was empty or was vacant.
The property to be rezoned is vacant.
Oh, I know that. Yes. Okay.
Any further questions? Okay. If there's no further questions, any discussion for Nathan or any other discussion for the applicant? Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Chair Ward,
Yes.
if you wouldn't mind, there is one phone call in listener. Jeff, if they want to raise their hand, it is *9, and then if they want to unmute, it's *6. Is that correct? So Chair Ward, it doesn't look like they're attempting to speak on this item.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I'll make that motion. We approve it as presented. In accordance with Grant 2035 plan, plan development and increased density.
I'll second that.
Have a proper motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
I'm going to poll each one of you to get the record count on your vote. Mr. Moody,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. Chrisman,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
and I vote aye myself, and Mr. Chin.
Aye.
I thought I missed something. I thought I heard a nay the first time around. Yeah. Okay. All right. It was unanimous then. Thank you. Nathan, next name?
Yes, sir. Chair Ward, Mr. Banesh also just emailed me and I sent him the invite. Do you want to wait for him to show up or should I start with ER 2006?
Let's wait for him to show up.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I don't see him. I guess we'll just move on, and if he logs on, if you interrupt me, and we'll bring him on in with us.
Yes, sir. Truby Apartment CR 2006 is a request for conditional rezoning from light industrial. The application is for 22 buildings with 24 units per building for a total of 1,056 bedrooms. A list of proposed conditions was included in the application. One, an access via Truby Drive and a secondary access via an easement for fire purposes. That it would meet all TRC, NCDOT, and other required standards. That it would meet all standards for the City of Graham multifamily zoning. That it would include an office, clubhouse, pool, and recreational areas. That there would be a 3-story with a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom areas. For this one, staff is recommending denial at this time, although it does align with the comprehensive plan as recommended. The traffic analysis pattern should be evaluated prior to approval, and there is a downstream sanitary sewer bottleneck which should also be evaluated prior to approval for this item.
Nathan, just out of curiosity, if it's he has to comply with TRC if it was approved, why would we want to hold up the process if he's got to comply with all regulations from TRC?
Because he could potentially have $10 million worth of improvements in order to comply with TRC's requirements for this project.
Well, the applicant's here, so let's hear what he has to say and we'll go from there. Before we get started with this particular one, I just need to let everybody on the board know that I have done business with Mr. Burton's business over the years, not presently doing anything with him or haven't done anything with him in the past year. But I just want to bring it to the board's attention, and if there's anyone that wants me to recuse, I'll be more than happy to.
I have no problem.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I am also doing business with the Burtons with their businesses. I don't think it'll persuade my decision either way.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Any problem with Mr. Moody or myself sitting, or
Have
would
no problem.
anyone like us to recuse?
I have no problem.
No, I don't have a problem with it.
Nope, I don't have a problem with either one of you.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, let's move forward. Jeff, if you would, let the applicant speak. I think that's Mr. Burton, hands raised.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I got the floor?
You do.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
State your name and address for the record, please.
I'm John Burton. You my address?
Yes, sir.
1360 Truby Drive. No, well, I guess that's
You want your house address?
my house address.
Yes, that'd be fine. Your house address.
2849 Willoughby Court in Burlington.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Burton, you got the floor.
Okay. Yes, we're trying to get the 55 acres in Hog River rezoned conditional. And we're working with Webb and Associates. We feel like that will, the ultimate goal is to help Graham, and of course it'll help us as well. We are aware of things that could come up that could be a cost to our project. And we are willing to look at those costs. And we understand all that, but also I'm gonna turn it over to George. He can explain further. But what I want to reiterate is whatever the problems are that we have to hurdle over, it's a good chance that we can get over that hurdle. But we're gonna have to know precisely what those hurdles are. And we know a few of them now, but I don't see that being $10 million. I'm not saying Nathan's wrong or right, but I just don't know. We feel like that's way overboard. But I'm gonna turn it over to George. He can explain it better than I can. And this is George.
Well, yes. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, Mr. Webb,
Yes.
if you would state your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. This is George Webb IV. I live at 129 Hudson Street in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm working with Webb and Associates and the Burtons on this one. So we're currently at the point where we're doing a traffic impact analysis, or about to begin that. And what we're learning is there's significant costs with finding this information, and what all we're going to have to do to bring the sewer system and the impact we'll have on the traffic flow. And we come before the board tonight to see, before we engage in spending this money, to try to see if there were any other hurdles, that are unknown at this point, to make sure that this is worth our, that we're have support from the city on it.
All right. Mr. Webb, if you would, the property here that you're proposing all these buildings on.
Yes, sir.
What is the topography like out there?
It needs a lot of work. It slopes back to the river. As you can see, we do have grade lines shown on our on the plan we submitted. Those are the existing grade lines. From Truby Drive entrance, it slopes back towards the river. But there would certainly be a significant amount of grading need to be done and that's why we feel multifamily would be a great fit for this lot too, is we can have buildings at different elevations.
Okay, and I know this at this point would be premature and it's not binding to anything that we're talking about, but as far as the bedroom count, I understand there was 1,000 and some bedrooms associated with this. Do you have a breakdown of what 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, how many buildings would occupy those?
Yes. So we have a total of 22 apartment buildings. 25% of those would be 3-bedroom apartments. 50% would be 2 bedrooms, and then 25% of the units would be 1 bedrooms, which brings a total to 1,188 bedrooms.
Okay. What type of amenities was you proposing for this particular property?
As of now, we have an office building that would also house a clubhouse and administration, and then we would have 2 dog parks in there, as well as a playground for children in the area as well.
Okay.
And there's also a pool.
Yes, sir, and a pool and that'll accompany the clubhouse, and that totals 6,200 square feet.
We know that the one entrance that you were talking about is Turnberry, but where would your second entrance be proposed at coming in here?
It's an entrance to Flying J.
It would be at the entrance to Flying J.
Gas pumps.
The basically the opposite side of the lot as Truby Drive.
Right.
You can see it on the far left corner of the site plan.
Gotcha.
You don't have easement for that yet, or is that,
Oh,
or is that already existing?
Yeah, yes, we do have an easement for that.
Okay, and that runs parallel to the entrance ramp?
Yes, sir.
yes, yeah, 60
Okay.
foot. 60-foot entrance. I mean, easement.
Any questions for Mr. Burton or Mr. Webb from anyone?
I suppose there are enough parking spaces, and there's a lot of buildings. And how many parking spaces do you allow per bedroom? I don't know how you measure.
Well, we do have Chad online, and he helped us on this project. Chad, you there? Well, he can shed some light on it as well, because he's the one that engineered it.
Well, all that has to pass the TRC, so that's okay. I was just curious. I mean, that's a lot of buildings, a lot of bedrooms, a lot of people.
Yes, and we would also like to make a comment on the number of units and people. Yeah, as we move forward with the traffic study and the sewer impact, we may find that a lesser number of units may be more suitable due to cost of these items. So that's still a moving target there, but this is generally what we're shooting for at the moment.
Mr. Burton and Mr. Webb, if you would, I know you're both side by side, but in order for the clerk to get the minutes correct, would each one of you identify yourself when talking so she would know which one it was, please?
It's Mr. Webb. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Burton, how long has this property been there? How long have you had this property?
Well, actually, Jack and I discussed it today. It's been 10 plus years. I don't think it's been 15, but between 10 and 15 years we've had it on the market, actually. And I think the reason we hadn't sold it is we probably hadn't got into what we're going to get in tonight to talk to our developers on. It's just all been sketchy about the sewer, about I think that's one reason we hadn't sold it. We just need to get a fine tune on what whoever buys this property, even if it's industrial, what has got to happen to get it done, as far as the sewer and water, and we need to know that. But But like I say, it's been on the market like 10 plus years.
Thank you.
But we feel like the conditional is the best opportunity to get it marketed and for the best interest of Graham. And for more tax base. I think it will bring more tax base. Rather than doing industrial.
Is Mr. Huffines your engineer?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Huffines, Jeff, if you would, if you'd let Mr. Huffines unmute him where he could talk. Mr. Huffines, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Ward, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Hey, Mr. Ward, Mr. Page, Chad Huffine, 505 East Davis Street, Burlington, North Carolina, 27215. Civil engineer for the project. Thank you for hearing our case this evening. I just wanted to, in light of staff's opinion for tonight, I would like to ask for a couple of items to be made known to the second partners group. We do understand through some conversations earlier in the week that there's a significant sewer demand the project will place on the existing system. We'd like to know what the existing capacity is, and then we'd like to know what steps we would need to take to further increase that capacity, either as a development group or in concert with the city. Second item I'd like to try to discover tonight is in light of the TRC requirement condition, we would like to know specifically, number one, if there've been any traffic studies on adjacent properties, similar uses in that area. Those could be made known to us at this time before we engage the transportation and traffic engineering study. And then thirdly, if we could determine the staff's position as well as the planning board's position on the condition of Truby Drive. We could discuss those items either at the staff level or tonight on the floor would be fine with me. I think that that information would certainly be helpful as we move forward through the process. Mr. Ward, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Nathan, the information that Mr. Huffines is, I guess, requesting, do you know if there's been a traffic study been done recently on Jimmy Kerr there?
So there has not, and NCDOT in their ERC notes has indicated that they would require a traffic impact analysis for this. That information was passed on to the applicant last week, recognizing that a week's not enough time to do a traffic impact analysis. But we've been in communication with NCDOT attempting to determine if there's a list of approved vendors for that, or if it's just anyone with a professional engineer stamp. Mr. Huffine was also put in touch with the city's engineer in regards to the sewer questions, and I don't know any more about the discussion in that direction. In terms of the condition of Truby Drive, I'm not able to evaluate that. Obviously, there's some cracks out there, but that's also probably the heaviest trafficked location in the entire city, with the exception of the interstate. And the concrete paving course out there is not the standard paving course. It would take somebody who knows a lot more about road course to be able to say whether that needs to be rebuilt in 6 months or 6 years or not.
Thank you. Mr. Huffines,
Yes, sir.
did that answer your questions, or would you like any more clarification?
I think specifically what I'd like to know is if there is a town study, perhaps, of the sewer capacity in that area. If that document exists, could it be made known to the applicant? The understanding from discussions with the town engineer or in agreement with what Mr. Page said. We've got a high traffic area. We've got a lot of different maneuvers. We've got a high volume of truck traffic. We also know there's a new school that's just been in place there. Would anticipate that a traffic study would have had to have been completed for the school. I may be wrong in that assumption. And then in addition to the traffic information that study may contain, current studies have to work in an allowance for a reduction in traffic because of the current virus conditions, reduce traffic. So we really need to know the specifics of what would be required if we are to engage in a new study. So I'd like to discuss those specifics, and this may not be the venue to do that. We may need to discuss that at the staff level. Tonight, we're specifically seeking the conditional zoning approval at the level. I understand also Nathan's concern with the evaluation of concrete pavement in Tribute Drive. We would definitely need to either collaborate with the city in a geotechnical materials evaluation of that pavement. This would certainly be to the neighborhood's best interest if the departments are in fact approved. They would have a smooth access to reach their homes each day. But the specifics of that pavement surface and how they behave currently versus what would be covered by the city's responsibility versus the developer's responsibility. I'd like some specific information on that as well. I'll turn it back over to you, Dean.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
For Mr. Huffines from the board, or for Mr. Burton or Mr. Webb from the board?
I do.
They can hear you. They got to let you talk.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to let you know that I was here. I didn't know if you guys were aware of it. I had trouble with the other link.
Thank you, Mr. Benesh. I got you covered. I'll see you. Any questions for Mr. Burton from the board or Mr. Webb?
Now, what you want from us is approval to change the zoning on this so you could do a study to see if it's going to cost too much to put apartments in there, or so you can try to market it. Whoever is going to buy it, knowing that these obstacles exist. Is that a fair assumption?
Mr. Burton, your mic's muted. Unmute your mic, please.
Go ahead. This is John Burton.
Did you hear the question, Mr.
I didn't hear
Burton?
the question. I didn't hear the question.
Mr. Chrisman, could you ask it one more time, sir?
What you're asking for is for the conditional rezoning to the multifamily for future development. Are y'all going to do the study to see how much all this is going to cost with the other access and so you have a price tag to put on it?
Yes, sir.
But
yeah, we want to study the cost. Let me ask you a question. This is what I need to know. Right now it's zoned for industrial. So let's say hypothetically we would get an industrial come in there and build a building. Who is responsible to upgrade that sewer system, or what would be the process? I mean, what expense would that be? Who would it be on?
Mr. Page, could you assist us with that?
I'd like my question answered first before we do hypotheticals.
Yeah, yes, we would do an analysis to see what the cost is going to be on all these situations: the sewer, the water, the road analysis, all those issues.
Okay, that'd be the traffic study, all the extra expenses, and then I'll ask Mr. Page that if this is approved and we can do the hypothetical, then that to make best use of the land, what's required of the city to make best use of the land?
In a circumstance like this, the city has some requirements. We have to provide access to the property. We have to provide water at the property. And we have to provide sewer at the property. And right now there's sufficient water, sewer capacity and access for an industrial user. This is significantly more than the existing infrastructure would suffice for. And in those circumstances, as the board has seen, it is the developer's responsibility to upgrade all of the subpar infrastructure such that their development would then work on the parcel.
So they can't build, I don't know, 24-inch outfall sewer pipe to go into a 12-inch pipe then, right?
So in this circumstance, it's not the size of the sewer, it's the size of the downstream pump station, which this one flows to the Haw River pump station, which has very limited capacity. This would far exceed the excess capacity at that downstream pump station, probably by a factor of 10.
Are there any plans to ever upgrade that pump station to make better use of the property down that way?
Yes, sir. As soon as we raise the taxes for everyone except for Michael Benesh and Justin Moody, we're going to go ahead and do that.
So you said if we want to flush it, we have to pay for it. Is that what you're saying?
So the city is currently engaged in 2 pump station projects, one of which is at Old Fields and the other one which is at Boyd Creek. And both of those projects are over $3 million. It's anticipated that the Haw River pump station may not be that much. But we just don't have a good number on it, given that we have been expending so much money on our sewer in other locations. We haven't studied the upgrade to this location yet. As y'all are aware, the Boyd Creek one was a environmental concern that was frequently in the newspaper. And so we needed to take care of that immediately. And then the Old Fields outfall, the developer put some money down that allowed the city to abandon 2 existing pump stations, which will save us money in the long term.
Okay, how big an area does the Haw River pump station cover?
100%, it's everything east of the Haw River that doesn't go to the Cherry Lane pump station. So it does currently pump Old Fields, Elements Community Crossing, this vicinity, of course. I believe there's a manufacturing plant to the northeast that school pumps to it. And then there is some infrastructure further downstream that connects into it in the vicinity of like Valley Drive area.
All the new development on Jimmy Kerr and all that stuff we've been going to goes to the
That goes to the
goes to Cherry Lane station.
No,
No, what?
no, it doesn't go to the Cherry Lane station, not the new developments.
The items on Jimmy Kerr and Jim Minor go to the Cherry Lane pump station.
On Jimmy, yeah, okay. On Jim Minor, yes.
Pump station. They're
Mr.
potentially-
Page, the Haw River pump station, that we're talking about, is this the one that's actually at Jimmy Kerr in the forks of the road up there, right up from the school? Is that the one we're talking about?
No.
Which one? Help me with it. And the reason I'm asking that question, I know several years ago, the discussion was brought up about that particular pump station that was built for a community that never came to Haw River. And
That would be the Cherry Lane pump station, and if this development could go to the Cherry Lane pump station, it would be able to handle it. The Haw River pump station is near the canoe access where 54 crosses the Haw River.
Down at the, underneath the bridge down there.
54.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's right at the bridge.
okay. Any other questions, Mr. Chrisman?
I don't know. Well, I feel about it. I think the land needs to be developed. I think that this would be a good thing to have, increase the tax value. And if we want to flush the toilets, we have to have some place for it to go. How much of an increase in tax value would this 1,000 bedrooms put in there how much economic impact would it have for the city of Graham, and what's the payback on a pump station?
It's a win-win-win.
Yeah,
Um,
and I want to say something heretical, whatever. Anyway, something that people aren't going to want to hear. But if you want nice things, you got to pay for them. And if we want to grow the city of Graham, we'll have to make a sacrifice to raise taxes a penny or something to pay for it.
I agree.
Heretical. That's what it was.
I agree with it, Mr. Chrisman. Mr. Page, if by chance this board did decide to go for a vote tonight, the conditions could be set that he meets all of these conditions. If it was approved, could be one of the conditions. Is that appropriate?
I'm not sure what is being proposed, Chair Ward, but the applicant in their application, one of their proposed zoning conditions was that the project proposed to comply with the City of Graham TRC, including obtaining approval and proper water, sanitary sewer, erosion control, NCDOT, and stormwater permits.
Then that would be sufficient to cover. I just don't want to use the burden of not being able to get access to city staff or engineers because everybody's working from other locations. I actually tried to call our engineer today at the city and also the city attorney and didn't get a call back from neither one. So certainly, I know staff is limited in their offices, but here's a developer wanting to move forward with something, and I certainly don't want to delay someone from taking advantage of the economy as it is today. Any further questions for Mr. Burton or Mr. Wood or Mr. Page from any of the board members?
Yeah, I got one more, I think. Mr. Page mentioned the $10 million figure to do the site analysis and the site prep and all that kind of stuff. And you said that wasn't a realistic figure. What's the realistic figure?
Who are you asking with that?
Well, Mr. Burton, Mr. Somebody down there that we were talking to about that mentioned that your $10 million figure was overestimated. I just wondered what their figure was.
Mr. Burton or Mr. Huffines, do y'all have an answer for that question? Mr. Huffines, if you would, unmute yourself.
This,
You have George Webb here again.
Okay.
As for the cost of those improvements, we're it's unknown at this point. We do feel like the $10 million estimation was much higher than we're expecting, but we're kind of at a crossroad where we need to spend a substantial amount of money to get an accurate idea of those costs. But we do not feel like they'll be anywhere near that $10 million figure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Jeff, if you would unmute Mr. Huffines, please. He's still muted. There you go. Mr. Huffines, you've got the floor. State your name.
Mr. Ward, hey, this is Mr. Huffine again. I want to further bolster George's comments. It's critical for us to know exactly what the capacity is at present, what the excess capacity is at present, so that we can then take on some studies or either work with the city if what studies they may already have in determining what the cost would be. I think to try to forecast what that might be at this point is just premature. We don't know. We just need to know. We've got to find out. And the conditions that staff has worked with us on placing for the conditional rezoning, I feel like the appropriate permitting process, the TRC approval process, all of those checks will, I guess what I want to say is we'll reinsure you as we progress forward that those steps and benchmarks are being made. At this time, we don't know how much improvements would cost simply because the studies that we have in front of us are either unknown or yet to be engaged. And so we understand that, but we need to be able to find some facts out from the city as we move forward. I hope I said that correctly. Back to you, Dean.
And Mr. Huffines, have you tried to make contact with engineers at Allen Williams, Carmody King?
Yes, sir. Mr. Ward, Josh Johnson and I had a conversation last week where we tried to make known the items that we would need to discuss and discover. Those being the pump station capacity, the traffic conditions at the Truby Drive intersection, and the condition of Truby Drive. Now that we know those are items that we need to be concerned about, we've got to dig into them specifically to get costs. So then we can answer maybe better Mr. Crispin's question. At this point, we just don't know.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions, Mr. Crispin?
Yeah, are those unreasonable requests, Mr. Page?
I don't believe they're unreasonable requests, but there's one larger piece that's missing here. As anyone who's ever been in this neck of the woods knows, Truby Drive isn't the issue. The issue is Jimmy Carr and the interchange with the interstate. And if Mr. Huff can upgrade that intersection for less than $10 million, I encourage him to hire me and we'll work together for the FHWA all over the state.
Okay, whose responsibility? I mean, taking Trudy Drive out of the equation, whose responsibility is Jimmy Kerr Road in that intersection? What has to happen first?
The intersection of Jimmy Carr Road and Truby would be NCDOT. The intersection of 4085 and Jimmy Carr would be FH, the Federal Highway Administration.
Okay, then who pulls the plug on it if it gets to the TRC stage? If we approve it gets to TRC stage and DOT and FHA says, no, we're not going to do that, then they pull the plug?
They're not going to say that it can't be done. They'll say it can only be done if you do these improvements. And those improvements could be in excess of the value of this location. I don't think that's likely in this circumstance, but it's a potential. And then you would have a property that was zoned for a use that could never be constructed.
If we
then
deny-
whoever was going to do something else with the property have to come back and get it zoned to whatever they wanted to use it for. Is that correct then?
Yes, sir.
If we deny this request for rezoning, there's no incentive for all the agencies to get involved in regards to the traffic analysis, the sewer, or any of that. And it sounds like there's got to be incentive to motivate those on the government side, as well as for the developer, to invest the time and money to do these analysis and the cost benefit that we're asking of them. But to outright deny their requests right now, why not approve it with conditions? The conditions being that they do the traffic analysis, they do the sewer analysis, and by having a conditional approval, the city engineers and folks like that now have a stake in it to represent the city. By denying the request, there's no incentive for the city engineers or anybody else to take interest in how this proceeds.
I agree with you, Mr. Chin.
I agree there too, Mr. Jim.
The traffic problem on Jimmy Kerr Road has been there for years. And we talked about it numerous times throughout the years of I've been sitting on the planning board. And until NCDOT wants to address it, it's really out of the city of Graham's hands until they allow us to move forward by saying what they want. So to deny this gentleman would be unjust, I think, at this time and point. Any further questions for the applicant or staff?
To the applicant, are you prepared to get that far into it and then have it denied by DOT?
Mr. Burton or Mr. Webb?
Or have an exorbitant price that DOT says, okay, yeah, we'll do it, but you've got to, enlarge the road and all these other things that have to go that jack your price way up.
Yeah, yes, this is John Burton. Yes, we would do those analysis. We'd have to do those analysis to know where we're going.
Okay, then to Mr. Page, does that become a win-win for the city? So that, okay, somebody else has paid for this study to make this land useful and valuable.
I think that there's benefit in having private development explore expenses and analysis. For traffic, that data is readily available and open. There are some protections on the sewer system that will allow us to share everything for our sewer system and capacity. We can share some of that information, and I think Chad may be able to access all of it as a professional engineer, but like you or I can't go and request the city's sewer reports. So there would be benefit there, but you would be asking additional things of staff at a time when the council is unlikely to have any funds to do any upgrades to that location due to the two current sewer projects.
Chad Huffine.
Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
Chairman Ward, I would just like to echo Nathan's response and Mr. Chin's response, and to the point of Mr. Chrisman. In order to move the process forward, we've got to have some type of motivation. The developer has already, or the development group has already spoken. They're ready to commit to these studies with expedience at the paramount. So I think all of these requests are in line. I think that in order to get the fact finding moving, we just got to have a green light, and I think that's where we are. Mr. Ward, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Alphonse. Anyone else in the audience like to speak about this item tonight? Okay, I'll go for a discussion amongst the board members.
Mr. Chairman, it appears that they're willing to do, as Mr. Chin said, all the legwork to find out exactly what all needs to be done and spend the money to do it. Along with, in the packet, it says the proposed project is and plan, the capacity issues for the traffic congestion and sanitary sewer must be solved before approval be issued for this project. And with their willingness to do so, I really don't see any problem with letting them move forward on it. I am concerned about the Jimmy congestion there and what all will take place, but there's only one way to find out through a traffic study, which they're willing to do through the TRC.
Thank you, Mr. Benish. Mr. Bailey?
I have no comment right now.
Mr. Perry, you've been awful quiet.
All good at this moment, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Moody
I'm good right now.
and Mr. Chin.
I think we should approve it with conditions. Denying it, there's no motivation for them to proceed. Because otherwise they'll think they're pouring money down the drain.
Thank you. Mr. Page, you have anything further you'd like to add?
No, sir, Chairwoman.
Thank you, sir. All right, well, I've heard from all of you, and if there's nothing further and no one else wanting to speak here, so I'll entertain a motion.
I can make a motion.
Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Moody.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve this based on the conformity with the 2.2.1 and the 5.1.1 that's consistent with the Graham Comprehensive Plan 2035 with the conditions that it complies and meets with the TRC standards.
And if you would you mind adding the other language there? The capacity issue for traffic congestion and sanitary sewer must be solved before approval to move farther.
Yes, the as far as the NCOD traffic study and the sewer study also be meet requirements. Does that work?
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I still would like to poll each board member. Mr. Bailey,
It's a go for me with the conditions.
Mr. Chrisman.
Aye, with the conditions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chin?
Aye, with the conditions, but would you clarify the statement about the Hall River Pump Station? Are we including the entire statement as proposed? That being the developer will upfit the Hall River Pump Station to city specifications to handle the additional flow with the ability of city staff to upfit the proposed sizing at material costs. That last section, I don't quite understand what that implies or what that, I'm confused by that last statement. With the ability of city staff to upfit the proposed sizing at material costs.
Chair Ward, would you like my input?
Please.
Mr. Chen, that's so if the developer needs to upgrade for, if I remember correctly, the flow from this is something like estimated at 1 million gallons per day. So if the developer needs to upgrade by 1 million gallons per day, and the price for putting in a pump that would serve 2 million gallons per day was 50% more, the city would eat that additional cost, but it would still be installed by the developer. Now, if the whole pump station needed to go from one size to another size, that's not an upsize. You've got excavation and all sorts of stuff and whatever. It's an upsize in the material pieces that would be used for it.
Okay, thank you. Then I have no issues with the wording.
Mr. Moody, how did you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Benish?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Mr. Page, you have a question?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. proposed conditions that Mr. Chin was reading from weren't the ones that Mr. Moody had added to the motion.
Mr. Chairman, can we have Mr. Moody resubmit those conditions with that added verbiage
We've already voted
as
on that one thing.
presented
Should
by the
we?
sheet and the proposal?
I think we voted on that one, but I guess we could take another motion and add an additional condition. And
Or
I'll
amend the motion?
No, the motion's already passed.
be glad to entertain,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I'll be
Sorry
glad
about that.
to entertain a second motion there if someone wants to make it.
So what is the second motion to be?
If you want to add that extra language that Mr. Benesh was talking about.
Mr. Chan, the additional language, if we were to make the motion, would be the developer will upfit the Hall River Pump Station to city specifications to handle the additional flow with the ability of the city staff to upfit the proposed sizing at material cost.
All right, I'll make that motion.
Is upfit the proper word there, Mr. Page?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
A second.
All right. Proper motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
We didn't have anything on the comprehensive plan on that. Is that necessary?
Don't think so.
Okay, aye.
So moving forward, I'll poll each one of the board members for the record. Mr. Christmas,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. Benesh,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Moody,
Aye.
Mr. Chin,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Thank you, board members. Mr. Page, let's move on.
Yes, sir, Chair Ward. The next item before us is another conditional rezoning. This one is on Marshall Street. It's located there at McAden in South Marshall. You can see the image before you. It is a request to rezone the property from R7 to conditional residential. The applicant is to reduce the restriction on an accessory structure in the front and side yards to allow for the construction of a carport. However, as there are many other residences in the R7 district with similar circumstances, staff recommends a change to the regulations rather than a change to the singular lot. The applicant did modify their application from when they originally submitted. They do own the parcel immediately south of this one, and so they moved that property line. So they're only asking for that front property line to change. Staff has also is simultaneously running a development ordinance amendment that would reduce the front yard setback in R7 from 30 to 15, which would help this lot. It would help many of the other lots that were laid out at a similar time, particularly in the area of Cedar, Poplar, Market, Oneida, Mill, Washington Street area of town.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Page?
Sorry, Chair Ward, I do believe that Mr. Albright is here to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, if you would unmute Mr. Albright, please. Mr. Albright, if you would, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jim Albright. I live at 103 Rock River Road in Morrisville.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. 103 Rock what?
Rock River, R-I-V-E-R Road in Morrisville.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So my sister Jane has moved back to the area, has retired, and has gone back into the home place and has remodeled and refurbished. And in that process, she has, towards the end of it, she didn't think she wanted a carport, but having to park a season under the pecan trees, she decided she wanted to put a carport in there. And so she's hired Robert Smith as our contractor. And Robert was actually going to do the speaking tonight, but he is in the hospital. So I'm kind of sitting in for the situation just to see if there were any questions. But basically up and down where there's only 2 houses on that side of Marshall Street now anyway. And if you go further down, Robert had all the facts and figures about different setbacks along the way. I think the house specifically on Marshall and Gilbert down there is, well within side 30. I don't know what it is, but was just wanting to be able to put a carport up there. And in order to do that, needed to go through the conditional rezoning process.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Any questions for Mr. Albright?
Mr. Albright, did you think about submitting a request for variance to the Board of Adjustments?
What I did not think about that. Robert has kind of been handling this, and as far as I know, he just submitted a request, a conditional rezoning request before Christmas.
The Board of Adjustments handles variances, and this seems like an ideal application for a variance versus changing, conditionally rezoning everything.
I disagree. I think that it's a great idea to consider more flexibility in R7.
Question from Mr. Page. Wild swag. Approximately how many lots would this affect on the older sections of town that you mentioned, as far as making available lots more attractive for construction?
So I think most of these lots currently have homes on them. If you walk down or drive down the older area of town, almost all of the homes are within 30 feet of the property line. And so we have a huge number, more than a couple hundred. I mean, it may be 500, it might be 1,000 homes that are currently non-conforming based on the changes for our regulations. And as you saw in the staff report, well, I guess it's the development ordinance amendment that comes up later, that it says prior to 1958, there was no requirement for a front yard. After 1958, there was a front yard requirement for 25 feet. And then subsequently in 1967, it was changed to 30 feet. So the 15-foot that's recommended by staff would allow Ms. Albright to do what she wants here, and would bring a large number of other lots into compliance. It may allow for some other development on lots that are a little bit tight right now elsewhere in the city, but that number wouldn't be very large. It would be a handful, maybe 24, something like that. And then the last point, the Board of Adjustment is not able to approve variances for items that are circumstances that are common to the neighborhood. And in this circumstance, it is common for this neighborhood to have houses be within 30 feet. And so the Board of Adjustment would not legally be able to approve a variance for this proposal.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I didn't think it was possible.
Any other questions?
This R7. How many? I mean, not many developments that we've approved to have a lot sizes that small. They're moved down, but they still comply with the free space. How would this impact future developments if somebody's going to plan for R7 lots? They just build bigger houses on the same size lot, or just closer to the road?
You could do either, but the lot size for a 7,000 square foot lot, it doesn't restrict the size of your house. You could build like a 6,000 square foot single story house on this lot. So the deciding factor is typically the amount of money that an individual is willing to spend on the lot rather than the zoning restrictions.
Okay.
All right, I see I got one attendee wanting to talk here. Jeff, if you would, bring on David Burden. Sir, if you would, please state your name and address after you're unmuted. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. My name's David Burdett. I'm an architect with Burdett and Associates Architects in Raleigh. My address is 6340 Chadford Drive in Raleigh. Thank you for taking me in this evening. Mr. Page mentioned this topic. We were talking earlier today because I represent a developer who's looking at some property in an area that's zoned R7. Currently, it's a neighborhood of single family detached. He's interested in building upper end, if you will, duplex homes in this neighborhood. And one of the things and challenges that we've discovered, Mr. Page is correct that you, in certain circumstances, can get to 6,000 feet of developable property on 2 stories. That's not always the case with setbacks in certain situations on an R7, though. We're finding on average that with a 30-foot setback, we're sitting at around 24 to 2,700 square feet per floor, which is below 6,000 square feet. And if we wanted to do any amenities like porches or garages or decks on the back, that's going to impinge on the developable use of this land to get a higher value on that property. We strongly support the idea of pulling the 30-foot setback closer to the street. 15 or 20 feet would be better for us.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the board members?
Mr. Ward, I believe he may be talking about the amendment up next rather than this item.
That's what I was thinking. I was
Okay. Sorry, I thought we were on that one. Well, I'll just hold that point
Yes,
till later.
Just hold that for me. Okay.
And if we change the next
item,
then should we deny this one and change the next one so it will comply no matter what?
So that is staff's recommendation.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, let me ask you this, Nathan, changing it to all R7s, if it was to blanket it all, would change a lot of what we've already done with some of the setbacks, some of these townhomes. Is that correct?
No, sir. All of the townhomes are approved under a special use permit and conditional rezonings. There are a few that were approved under R7 setbacks for conditional rezonings. But for the most part, those were very specific and were drawn on the lot itself as to what the setback would be.
I lost the latter part.
You cut up there. The short answer is no.
Well, I'm sorry. I guess I'm having a computer problem. Everything just, unless you can hear me, everything just kind of, I don't know.
We can hear parts of you, Mr. Benesh. You're going in and out.
Yeah, that's the problem I'm having on my end. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Nathan answered that question as the short answer being no. Did that answer?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right. Any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
The motion is to deny this, to approve the next one.
I think you need two separate motions, sir.
Yes, Mr. Christmas, we're only working on this one right this second.
Sure, but in order to prevent the next motion from being denied, I make a motion we approve this. So we don't have to
Chair Ward,
Yes, I'm listening.
you have the authority to adjust the agenda if you wanted to bump the next item up and then come back to this one.
Good. Let's place this one on hold and let's go to the next one, and
withdraw my motion.
and that'll clarify everything for us.
Thank you. That clears up a lot for me.
Nathan, if you would, let's move to the next one.
Yes, sir. So the proposal is for R7 to change the front yard from 30 feet with a note 9, which will in certain circumstances allow it to reduce by 10 feet to 20, but would still not be enough for, in this circumstance, Ms. Albright. And then just change it to 15, but to also remove that ability for it to flex to 20 in certain circumstances, such that it was just 15 across the board for all R7 lots.
So did I hear you correctly saying that this wouldn't help Miss Albright?
It would. Where it says C note 9 on your screen. Note 9 says the average front yard of all dwellings fronting on the same street and within 500 feet of the lot in question is 10 or more feet than the indicated lot depth. The front yard shall be 10 feet less than shown herein. So if it goes from 30 to 20, that doesn't fix Miss Albright's problem. But the 15, without that asterisk that can sometimes reduce it by 10, would solve her problem. And that would have everybody in R7 just be in 15 feet. There wouldn't be this note 9 that applies to R7. We're not going to delete note 9 because it would still apply to R18, R15, R12, and R9, but it would no longer apply to R7.
Thank you for clarifying. Any questions from the board for Mr. Page or anyone? Any discussion?
I think we pretty much discussed it concerning the Albright property.
Yeah.
I think so. Mr. Chrisman, I'll entertain your motion.
I'd like to make a motion in accordance with 2035 Plan Strategy 2.3.1 and 4.3.1, land use patterns and facilitate focused development. If we approve the change in the wording of the ordinance.
I second it.
Oh,
Oh, great. Both of them second it. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Hold on.
in looking at the proposed language, Mr. Page said that the C note 9 would be removed. But yet, if you look at it, C note 9 still is shown in R7.
The table would not have C note 9 under the R9 area, and it would have the 15 feet. Thank you, Bobby. It would be removed from the proposed language just in the R7 box. It would still be present in the other boxes.
Okay, because otherwise, note 9 is still there.
So for the record, in that motion, Mr. Chrisman,
Yes.
we just voted on. Do you want to change anything or add anything or revote?
The error was the typographical error on.
Yes.
Okay. If it's typographical error, then it's a typo.
Thank you, sir. All right. I will poll the board members to see how each one of us voted again, starting with Mr. Chin.
Nay.
Mr. Moody,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey,
Nay.
Mr. Benesh,
Yes, aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
and I vote aye myself.
I vote aye.
And Mr. Chrisman, I'm coming right to you. I had to flip these pictures. And Mr. Chrisman voted aye. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
I see that the 10D, let's go back to the previous one, Nathan, if you could. Thank you. It's back up on my screen now. Mr. Chrisman, going back to your previous motion in regards to the one on Albright Avenue, I think it's a moot point at this point. Do you want to make a motion?
I move we strike this from the agenda. If that's the proper motion. Or take no action on it because it's not, it's, like I say, it's a moot point.
Thank you. Mr. Page, is that appropriate or do we just need to deny this?
I don't know. I think that because the council hasn't yet approved the changed language, that the appropriate step would be to deny unless the applicant wanted to withdraw it. And for the same reason that Mr. Chrisman wanted to deal with the amendment before coming to this item, I think it's probably in the applicant's best interest to run both concurrently to the city council.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Albright. I see he's raised his hand again. If you would, Jeff, let Mr. Albright talk, please.
Until Nathan finished his comment, I was gonna withdraw it because I just didn't want to tell my sister who coached basketball that she had a loss and a win tonight. I just want to tell her she had a win. But if I understand you correctly, Nathan, you're just saying just leave it as is, go through so it'll go to the council as opposed to, I thought if it made it easier for me to withdraw it, we could just withdraw it. But you're saying I reckon the council could technically not go with the large scale change.
I think that there's that possibility. The one thing that frightens me is that if you get into a conditional rezoning for every house, and this is very much moving in that direction, that you end up with regulations that are based on who's asking and how well they know the planning board or the city council, and that's not something that I want to get into.
So that almost sounded like I could just pull it, or would be easier to do that.
Mr. Albright, would you like for us to move forward or would you like to?
Yeah, I would just like it to be pulled, please.
Thank you. Mr. Page, if you would, at the recommendation of the petitioner, this will remove this and it'll be a moot point for now.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Ward.
Thank you. And Mr. David Burden, if you would, Jeff, let him speak for just a second.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that this pending 15-foot setback rule is a minimum setback. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. That was the last agenda item. Is that correct, Nathan?
That was the last item from the new business. There was still the old business of the 160D. The attorneys have been marking up a copy of it, but as of this moment, I still don't have any comments from them on it.
Mr. Page, I happened to listen to the city council meeting the other night, and I understand Ms. Allen's concern about this coming down to the wire, and with this being some 600 pages for potential review. I understand that the attorneys have had it for 3 or 4 months. I certainly hope this is not going to come down to giving the planning board one night to look at something. And I was just wondering what we could do to speed this process up to get this before the board, or do we need to schedule 3 planning board meetings per month to go over this and review this prior to it going to council?
I think that it's certainly a valid question, and I can reach out to the attorney and ask them for an estimated time of completion. We do have items before the planning board for next month already. So you will have a meeting in February, so we can revisit the item based on the input from the attorney at that date.
Okay, and one of the things that this concerns me is that there's such a large volume of information, and I understand that a lot of it is set in stone and there's no adjustments to be made to it. But I just don't want to get down to the wire with the city council having to have it in their hands by the 1st of June. I know they will probably want to look at it before the 1st of June, wouldn't you think?
I can tell you that I like to review things carefully.
And I do too. And that's some of my segments. I called actually the attorneys twice today or 3 times today, and you get this automated answer, and that's because of high call volume, there's no one available. And I certainly don't like not being able to get in touch with the city attorney, because I wanted to ask these questions specifically when they thought this might come to your office, which you could present to us. So anything you can do to expedite it, I would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, so the planning board does have the draft that I sent to you guys, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. If you guys have any questions about it, I'm happy to go through those now if you'd like.
Well, I thought we originally started doing that, and not knowing what the attorneys was going to mark up and not mark up, we chose to stop doing that. But if that's the case, if you want to do that, I'd certainly like to see us meet more than once a month, and let's get this process on the go, because it's going to take us quite a period of time to go through 600 pages.
It's not 600 pages. It's just the existing development ordinance that's about 270. Not that it's nothing, but it's not 600.
Does any other board members have any input they would like or think to how much time they think it's going to take us to review and look at this and kick it around?
Well, I've gone through it. There are a lot of the changes that are well, we got to change the date that are, I want to say set in stone, but are automatic changes that have no discussion involved with them at all. There are a few that will require some discussion. We could discuss it and spend our time or spinning our wheels doing it. And the attorney has the same thing. I think we ought to come prepared in February, since we already have a meeting, to check. So, okay, these sections are of concern to us.
Great.
And so we can at least highlight those, so we know if the attorney makes changes to those sections, we know which one we're looking at.
Great, Mr. Christmas, thank you. So then, as far as I'm concerned with the board here, if the board would certainly spend their due diligence and time, that not saying that you haven't already, but if you would review and be prepared, let's prepare to make some progress in the February meeting with this 160D. Any other questions concerning the 160D? Any other board members have any other item that they would like to discuss? Awful quiet tonight. Mr. Christman, you're muted.
I am muted. I think we made progress tonight. I would like, in the past, I have voted nay on some items and explained my nay vote. I think it'd be good for the record for the people that vote nay on an item or vote against an item to explain their vote. Just for the record. That's their prerogative, of course, but.
Thank you, Mr. Christman. Noted. Certainly, each one of you's vote is your vote, and if you want to explain it, I welcome it. If you don't, I understand. Anything else? Nathan, anything else for us?
Just one item. The decision sheets, y'all did a great job today referencing the comprehensive plan, the consistency, and then the policies there, and I just wanted to give kudos for those. And just to remind you that the city council members typically are looking at your recommendation sheet when they make their own motion in the meeting. And so it really helps them when the format from the planning board is flawless, like y'all did tonight. Just to give you kudos and to encourage you to keep doing such a good job with the motions.
Thank you for the encouragement. Anything else, guys? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Christmas?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Well, wait a second, Mr. Christmas still needs to be
Well, I was going to, Bobby beat me to it. I'll second Bobby's motion.
Great. And all in favor, aye.
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 Good
Thank
night.
you, folks. See you.
Bye, guys.
Night. Have a good evening.